She gave everything for her family until they demanded her future. Welcome to our storytelling channel, where every story speaks to the heart. If this one moved you, we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. We read everyone. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. It's raw, real, and could be the one that finally speaks your truth. See you then. My name is Rachel. I'm 19 years old, born and raised in a quiet town in Ohio. If you asked anyone who knew me growing up, they'd probably describe me as the dependable one, the responsible daughter who followed the rules, stayed out of trouble, and always made her parents proud. I was the kid who turned in assignments early, volunteered at the library, and skipped every party just to study. Not because anyone forced me to, but because I believed that if I worked hard enough, I'd earn the life I dreamed of. Since I was 12, my parents promised me a college fund. It wasn't something we talked about often, but it was always there. This quiet, unspoken agreement that if I kept my grades up and stayed focused, there'd be enough saved for me to go to college without drowning in debt. That promise became my anchor. I babysat neighbors' kids every weekend, took advanced placement classes, even joined clubs I didn't care about, just to pad my resume. Every choice I made was with that future in mind. And then, there was Madison. My younger sister, 17, was everything I wasn't: free-spirited, spontaneous, reckless. She had this easy charm that made people forgive anything. When she crashed Dad's truck while texting, it was just a mistake. When she skipped school for a week, it was because she was stressed. And when she blew through her first semester at a private university, failing classes, partying all night, no one blamed her. They said she just needed time. I stayed quiet. I always did. Until one night everything came crashing down. We were sitting at the dining table when my dad slammed his palm down so hard the silverware jumped. His voice shook the room. "Then don't come crying to us when you're all alone," he shouted. His face was red with fury, but his eyes, they didn't even look at me like I was his daughter anymore. They looked at me like I was the problem. All I had done was say one word. No, I wouldn't give up my college fund so Madison could have another chance. No, I wouldn't sacrifice everything I had worked for so she could hit reset. Again. My mom held Madison's hand like she was made of glass, while I sat across the table, the villain of the evening. Nobody asked why Madison had dropped out. Nobody questioned how she burned through the grant they gave her. They just looked at me like I was selfish for wanting to keep what was mine. "She's your sister," my mom whispered, as if that explained everything. But I couldn't stay silent. "Any more? Who helped me?" I asked. My voice cracked, but I didn't cry. Not yet. That was the night I realized something that would change my life forever. I wasn't the daughter they loved. I was the safety net they expected to cut every time someone else fell. And I was done. I left that night with nothing but my backpack, my phone, and a heart full of questions. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have a toothbrush. But I knew I couldn't stay. Not after what they said, how they looked at me. My father's words echoed in my ears. "You're on your own." That wasn't a warning. It was a verdict. So I walked out the front door, past the porch light that had always meant home, and I didn't look back. I took 2 buses and texted the only person I trusted, Lena, my best friend since freshman year. She didn't ask for details. She just dropped me her address and said, "Doors open." Lena's apartment was small, barely 500 square feet. But that night it felt like a palace. I crashed on her pull-out couch, still wearing the clothes I'd left in. I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying the scene in my head. The slammed hand, the disappointment in my mother's eyes, Madison's fake tears, over and over, like a cruel movie on repeat. The next morning, Lena handed me coffee and said, "I know you're not ready to talk, but just remember, what they did to you, that's not love." Her words hit harder than I expected. After 3 days of sleeping on her couch, eating instant ramen, and avoiding my phone, I finally told her everything. About the fund, the betrayal, how they expected me to just hand it all over like I didn't matter. That's when she looked at me and said something that changed everything. If that account's in your name, they can't touch it. My heart skipped. I hadn't even thought of that. So I called the bank. And I'll never forget the woman's voice on the other end of the line, calm, polite, detached, as she confirmed it. Yes, ma'am. This was a custodial account, but now that you're 18, full ownership legally belongs to you. It was like someone had handed me a sword after years of walking through battlefields with nothing but a shield. They hadn't counted on that. They thought I'd cave like always, that I'd fold under pressure, that guilt would do the job they couldn't finish at the dinner table. But now, I had rights. I had power. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing to fight back. That night, I turned off my phone. No more voicemails from Mom crying about sacrifice. No more texts from Dad demanding I learn some respect. No more cryptic Instagram quotes from Madison pretending she was the victim. I wasn't playing the scapegoat anymore. I pulled out my laptop, Googled custodial account laws, state protections, and everything I could find on legal ownership. Page after page, thread after thread. I didn't stop until 3 a.m. Because if they wanted to make this about money, fine. Then I'd treat it like a business transaction. Only this time, I'd be the one calling the shots. The more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. It was a violation of legal boundaries, so I got strategic. I found a local law firm that offered free consultations for students. That's where I met Miranda, a calm, sharp-tongued attorney who didn't blink. When I told her everything, she asked one question. Is the account in your name and are you over 18? Yes, I replied. Then it's yours. No debate. If they try to access it again, send them my card. I'll draft a cease and desist myself. She didn't even flinch. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. I left her office with more than just legal advice. I left with something I hadn't felt in weeks. Confidence. So I got to work. I contacted the bank, set up two-factor authentication, changed every password, added fraud alerts, and printed every transaction record since the account was opened. I organized it all into a folder labeled, just in case. Then I made my next move. See, Madison had been telling everyone, friends, family, even the school, that I was just being dramatic and would come around eventually. But she didn't know I'd already contacted the admissions office at the community college she was applying to. I sent them a notarized letter from Miranda, clearly stating that no funds tied to my name could be accessed by or on behalf of Madison Miller. 3 days later, I got an email confirming her application had been flagged for suspicious financial dependency. The silence that followed, it was deafening. Then, like clockwork, my mom called. This time with that soft, sugary voice she usually reserved for bank managers and pediatricians. We're all stressed, she said. We said things we didn't mean. I didn't buy it. No, I replied. You meant every word. You just didn't expect me to mean mine. There was a pause on the line. Then came the pivot. Look, she said, we're willing to compromise. That word again, compromise. Funny how it only comes up when they're not holding the power. So I said, okay, let's meet. But this time we do it on my terms. I chose a public restaurant, neutral ground. I wore a blazer, brought a folder with all my documents, and Lena, just in case things got ugly. She sat a few tables away, pretending to study. Backup, just like always. My parents arrived 10 minutes late. Madison came too, in a new pair of sneakers and a permanent pout. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. Thank you for coming, I said, sliding the folder across the table. This is everything you've asked for, and my formal responses. If you attempt to access the account again, it will be considered a legal violation. Miranda, my attorney, will take it from there. They looked stunned, like I'd suddenly started speaking a different language. Madison scoffed. You brought a lawyer? I looked her dead in the eye. You brought entitlement. We all brought something. And for the first time, I saw fear, not rage, not disappointment, fear. Because they realized I wasn't their backup plan anymore. I was done being the fallback. After that restaurant showdown, they didn't call. Not for days. Not even a passive-aggressive group text. And honestly, the silence was a blessing. I used it. I moved into a studio apartment just outside campus, 420 square feet, cracked tile in the bathroom and a window that barely opened. But it was mine. I could leave dishes in the sink, play music at midnight, and drink coffee without feeling like I had to earn it. I worked evenings as a front desk receptionist at a gym. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid rent. On weekends, I built a freelance editing business, copy editing college essays, resumes, even the occasional breakup letter. I wasn't thriving yet, but I was free. That mattered more. And then I made the final move. I transferred the entire college fund, not to Madison, not to a shared account, not even to one with my parents' names still lingering on the paperwork. I moved every dollar into a 529 college savings plan with me as the sole account holder. No one could touch it but me. As a backup beneficiary, I listed a nonprofit that helps girls escape abusive or manipulative households, just in case something ever happened to me. I wanted that money to protect someone else like me, someone who'd been told her dreams could wait, her future was negotiable, her worth was measured by what she could sacrifice. It wasn't about revenge, it was about safety. 2 weeks later, I got an email from the community college. Madison's enrollment had officially been denied, flagged for suspicious financial claims and dependency issues. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just felt peace. For the first time in months, I could breathe without waiting for the next guilt trip. No more voicemails that started with tears and ended in threats. No more lectures disguised as concern. I started studying again, not just because I had to, but because I wanted to. Literature, psychology, creative writing. My days were full, but not heavy. And then one afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I didn't answer, but I looked through the peephole. It was my father. He stood there for 20 minutes talking through the door, sometimes angry, sometimes pleading. "You think this is a win?" he shouted. "You'll end up alone." And for a moment, I almost opened it. Not because I believed him, but because part of me still wanted to be heard. But I didn't. I waited until I heard his footsteps disappear down the hall. Then I walked over to my fridge, grabbed a sticky note, and wrote down one sentence in Sharpie. "They tried to take my future. I made it untouchable. It's still there, faded now, corners curling. But I see it every morning. Because that fund, it wasn't just about college. It was about the first time I ever chose myself and didn't apologize for it." Spring came slowly that year, not in flowers or sunshine, but in the quiet. The kind that lets you rebuild. My days were full, classes, late-night editing, ramen dinners, and long bus rides. But none of it felt heavy. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. I wasn't scanning my phone for guilt-laced texts or waiting for someone to yank the rug out from under me. This life, it wasn't perfect. But it was mine, and for the first time, that was enough. One day, out of nowhere, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. But I recognized the slanted cursive instantly. It was from my mom. She didn't apologize. Not really. Instead, she said she was reflecting, said things at home had been hard since I left, that Madison was still figuring things out, and that Dad had become distant. She hoped I was doing well. Inside the envelope, she included a photo, me as a little girl, maybe 5, on my dad's shoulders at the beach. I barely remembered the trip. At first, I didn't know what to feel. Was this a peace offering? A trap? Or just another attempt to pull me back into a role I no longer played? I didn't respond, but I didn't tear it up either. I slipped the photo into a box I keep under my bed, a box for keepsakes, not wounds. Not to forget, but to remember on my terms, because that's the thing no one tells you about walking away from family. It doesn't always come with fireworks or closure. Sometimes it's just a quiet decision to stop letting pain wear the mask of love. My high school guidance counselor emailed me a few weeks later. She said she'd nominated me for a writing mentorship. I hadn't even applied, but she did it anyway. In her nomination letter, she wrote, "Rachel is one of the strongest students I've ever met. Quiet strength, the kind that holds people up, even when they don't deserve it." I cried for the first time in months, not because of the recognition, but because someone finally saw me. Not for what I could give, not for what I could endure, just me. Lena's parents invited me to spend Easter with them. At first I hesitated. Holidays used to mean pressure, tension, fake smiles, but their home was different. Warm, easy. Nobody pried, nobody asked, "So, have you talked to your mom?" They just passed the mashed potatoes and handed me a second piece of pie. At one point, Lena's mom patted my hand and said, "You're family now, no escaping us." And I smiled, not the polite kind, the real kind. Because maybe that's what family really means, being chosen, not controlled. By summer, I had straight A's, a steady editing side hustle, and a short story published in the University Lit magazine. It was about a girl who carried her family like stones in a backpack, until she realized she could put them down and still stand tall. I never told anyone it was based on me. But I knew, and that was enough. If this story resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever been in a situation where standing up for yourself felt like betrayal to the people who were supposed to love you the most? Have you ever had to walk away from family, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation? Your voice matters here. Whether you've lived through something similar or just want to share your thoughts, we invite you to leave a comment below. Where are you watching from? What part of Rachel's story hit you the hardest? Was it the slammed table, the silence, or the moment she finally said no? Sometimes just knowing you're not alone can be healing. And who knows, your words might be the reminder someone else out there needs to finally take back their power. This channel is a space for honest stories and honest people. No judgment, just truth. So go ahead, scroll down and tell us your story, or simply write, "I hear you, Rachel," because maybe someone else reading will realize they're not the only one. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's story might just speak your truth next.